Okay, welcome to the heroic journey, a roadmap for life. This is one of my favorite things to know about. When I learned about it, I was fascinated. Wonder if any of you guys have heard about the heroic journey before. Go ahead and mention that in the chat if you have. Um, this was first outlined by the great Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, who was fascinated with myths and stories around the world. He loved to study cross cultures, and he noticed that cultures around the world, that there was a pattern to the storyline of the great epic stories that they told, no matter where you were, where this story came from. And he called that pattern, the common theme that he saw in those stories, the heroic journey. And this has since been studied massively. Everybody in Hollywood knows all about it. Hollywood stories are based on the heroic journey now. They understand how to use it as a template for writing a story. It's also a descriptor of the story of our own lives. And these myths and stories sort of emerged out of the collective psyche, right? They just sort of were expressed by great writers and storytellers of the time before knowing how the template worked. He figured out the template by looking at these different stories. And then that was followed up with by the great mythologist Joseph Campbell. And he wrote a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. He's got a whole mythology series that's wonderful to watch, that's on one of the stations, maybe Netflix, called The Power of Myth. Absolutely amazing to watch, where he goes through myths and stories from around the world and talks about them in depth, about how they follow the heroic journey story. So this heroic journey motif emerged organically, naturally out of the human psyche as a collective. It wasn't figured out top down, just like when you listen to yourself, right? It just sort of happened, and it happened the same way around the world. So it's a pattern we all share as human beings. Now, the pattern is that life is a heroic journey. And once we go through these steps, and this is laid out for you, you'll see it everywhere. You'll see it in your own life. You'll see it in the stories you read, in the movies you watch in particular. So both Jung and Campbell revealed that the myths, movies, and stories reflect the heroic journey that we're all on. And just like our dreams inflate, so you can think of these in some ways, Jung called myths like cultural dreams or living dreams of a group of humanity's dreams expressed out in fantasy. Just like with dreams inflate things and make them bigger, right? So, it exaggerates things. So if you're intimidated, if your boss said something that was intimidating, you might see a giant in your dream who's really scary, right? So it inflates it. So same with the myths and stories, they inflate it a little bit and they tell it these fantastical things, but they are parallels. They're meant to, even unconsciously or subconsciously, teach us how to move through our own lives. So in a way, they're like a light on the path, a lighthouse. So these are the steps of the heroic journey, and you'll become familiar with this because if you type the heroic journey in Google Images, you'll see a million of these different kinds of pictures. And in a sense, this picture here, oh, it's not letting me, I'll just open it up. This picture here is a little bit more accurate because what it shows is, and we don't have to look at the details yet, we'll go through those slide by slide, but what it shows is that it's a cycle, right? You get through one obstacle and on top of it, and then you hit the next one. Now it's a spiral. So it just keeps going. All right, so the first step of it is that we go from a journey from the known to the unknown. And this is what the yin yang symbolizes, is the known to the unknown. So known, unknown. That's the first symbol of the duality. Chaos and order. This is order, this is chaos. You can think of chaos as creativity because things are put together in a way that were not done before. So not according to the pre-existing order. So the two primary sort of fundamental symbolisms of the yin yang, which is overall a symbol of duality within the one whole, that there's two within one, but they're both one. This is where 2 equals 1. 1 plus 1 equals 1. So when you hear that, that's what that means. So 1 plus 1 equals 1 in terms of spiritual languaging. or mythological languaging. So we have the known, see the sun, to the unknown, the mystery. And we're consistently going from the known to the unknown. And from order, because the known, we have it figured out, it's ordered, we got that, to the unknown, chaos, we don't know that. All right, so it's a journey from the known to the unknown. So to get a sense of this, we're going to watch this neat little video clip that walks us through the steps of the heroic journey in Toy Story. And then we'll go through them slide by slide a little bit slower so you can get a feel for it.
In the 1900s, Joseph Campbell highlighted a characteristic of storytelling that can be seen in most, if not all, narratives that exist today. Whether it be in TV, movies, books, comics, or poetry, stories seem to not only function best when they utilize what Campbell coined the hero's journey, but they also tap into our psyche. And despite the hero's journey being something that we may have witnessed countless times in the stories that we engage with, we keep going back for more. Why is this so? Well, for one, we like good stories. It's what humans like best. From a story around the campfire to an accepted road rule, all the way to a literary great like The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, stories are what binds society together. But more than that, if done right, it is the underlying mythological concepts that are ingrained into us that we automatically understand and accept that makes us love stories. And alongside this, it is the symbolism that can be seen in all of our favorites that we tend to not specifically point out or articulate, but cause them to have a powerful hold upon us. But what is the hero's journey? In short, it is a process of discovery, attainment, and growth for the character or characters in the story. In the simplest form, as stated in The Hero with 1,000 Faces, Campbell represents it as a three-step process that includes separation, initiation, and return. Of course, it can be a lot more complicated than this, but as a brief overview, the hero's journey can be broken down into 12 main stages, as seen in this diagram. Starting off, we meet the hero in their ordinary life. Eventually, they are lured, abducted, or voluntarily proceed to their call of adventure. Once there, the hero is faced with an opportunity that entails some form of resistance. Following this, they defeat or subdue this resistance and step across the threshold to begin their evolution. We see this all the time in movies. We watch Luke Skywalker deny an opportunity to become a star pilot and wind up finding his aunt and uncle dead as a result of taking the droids out. We watch Simba disobey his father and venture to the elephant graveyard, which then results in the death of Mufasa. And we watch it when Peter Parker is hell-bent on making quick cash with his powers, which results in the death of his uncle, i.e. his father figure. After this refusal of the call, the denial of something more, the hero then takes the plunge and begins their journey. Along the way, they face various challenges, meet enemies, form friendships, discover attributes of their persona that they previously never tapped into. And just when everything seems lost, they burst up and out of the ashes, becoming the hero they were destined to be, and alter and evolve to a new state of being that was not known when they first left their ordinary life. Let's take a look at an example of this journey in one of the greatest movies of all time, Toy Story. When we meet Woody, it is life in the ordinary world. He's the top dog. He runs the show. Of course, it is obvious that some of the toys dislike his superiority. But generally speaking, Woody is not only Andy's favorite, but the kingpin among the toys. Woody's call to adventure presents itself when the new kid on the block known as Buzz Lightyear shows up. Threatened immediately by the appearance of this space ranger, Woody is slowly replaced by Buzz and his merchandise and is eventually thrown into the toy box, his own version of the underworld. At this point, Woody's whole world is turned upside down, where everything he thought he knew is gone. He's down at the bottom and not knowing what to do next. He lapses into denial and jealousy, fueled by his greed of being Andy's number one and his fear of change. Instead of accepting the alteration in his world, he refuses to evolve as a character. And so, to overcome his headspace and his emotions, he tries to regain control of the situation and decides to knock Buzz out of the window. This pushes the other toys into a frenzy, and as a result, Woody immediately loses the respect of his former toy friends. Things were already bad being shunned by his former best friend Andy, but out in the real world, things are about to get a whole lot worse. Down on the ground, Woody is instantly scared, sad, alone, but most of all, ashamed. He realizes what he did was wrong and decides to begin his journey of redemption. Given Buzz's relationship with the other toys, Woody starts to see Buzz as a mentor towards his redemption. But before that process can begin, Woody must first face his number one mortal enemy, Buzz Lightyear, i.e. the guy with a chip on his shoulder. So they battle it out at a petrol station, which then causes them to lose Andy entirely. But when everything seems lost, Woody becomes not only optimistic, but opportunistic by enticing Buzz to commandeer a spaceship that is heading to where Andy and his family are. Arriving at Pizza Planet, things are about to get a whole lot worse. Sid, Andy's troublesome neighbour, wins both Buzz and Woody in a classic claw machine game and takes them home to his lair, which quickly is realised to be their own version of hell. There, Buzz and Woody meet several toys that appear to be monsters. This pushes Woody to breaking point, and right when things seem incredibly dark for him, he is tempted to give up everything. But during his emotional breakdown that occurs alongside Buzz's toy identity crisis, they seize the sword and decide to team up to escape Sid's lair. The pair then round up the monsters and formulate a plan for their escape, and the road back begins as Andy and his family are on the cusp of leaving their home. Buzz and Woody, with help from their new allies, defeat the god of the underworld, Sid, aka Set, aka Satan, by toying with him and escape for the car. But thanks to the demon dog, Scud, they are denied a simple return. This then results in Woody being thrown off the truck that is full of the toys that hate him for what he did. Woody is then picked up by Buzz and RC, and they're back on their way. Then the battery dies. Then they are stranded once again. How many times can Woody be defeated before he gives up? Right when things are bad.
I just want to mention that this is one of my favorite parts of the heroic journey story is that it is constant problems, right? Obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, not just one, right? They almost get there and then there's another obstacle. And they have to keep pushing through. And this is such a reflection of our own situation. It often seems hopeless, like in Star Wars, it's hopeless, but we're going to go for it anyway. And this is all to show us that our challenges feel looming. They feel huge to us. And that's what this is reflecting, but keep going, keep going.
Right when Woody lives through countless defeats, he never gives up his fighting spirit. Even when everything is lost, he still seeks opportunity. He still sees opportunity. He still looks for his chance for redemption and rebirth. Woody thinks back to Sid's lair and remembers the match in his gun holster. He ignites rocket-loaded Buzz, and they're on their way towards the other toys, towards Andy, towards paradise. The toys see what Woody was trying to do, and they go about helping him. Buzz soars like the wind, and they both land in Andy's car shortly thereafter. Woody's hero's journey was a long one. It was filled with several tests and moments that broke his character and demeanor down constantly. Yet he overcame all of it, and along the way, he discovered attributes of his character that he previously never had. He learned things about the dark reality of jealousy, greed, fear, and anger, and overall realized his own self-worth that caused an evolution in his character. Plus, to top it all off, he got the princess too. Now, you may be thinking that an analyzation of stories like this cheapens the experience, but let's challenge this thought. For starters, a story with layers that delves into a mythological concept like the hero's journey that has been around for thousands of years doesn't necessarily dampen the story's strength, interesting aspects, or excitement, but rather enhances it. After all, it brings new meaning to the story, new levels of symbolism, reason, and motivation for why it is the way it is, why it is something we like so much. We may not realize it all the time, but we all love watching an ordinary person overcome something great. It's the classic underdog story. It's the story that is in our DNA. It's the story of life, the story of the first Tiktaalik that ventured its way onto land, the story of humankind pushing the boundaries in creativity, intelligence, and technology. It is the story that shows us that no matter how scary things may seem, that if we step into the unknown, if we step across the threshold, not only can it result in a journey that is powerful, interesting, and memorable, but it can push the limits of our character and the world around us. Whatever challenges we may face, whatever people we may meet, whatever we may learn about ourselves and the world around us, all of this can play a part in creating, defining, and establishing the person we are today, and ultimately result in the person that we can become tomorrow.
Fin. Fin means end in French. So pretty cool, huh? Pretty interesting, huh? So let's jam through the stages. The steps of the heroic journey mirror our lives on the journey of self-discovery. And this is another film clip you can watch if you want to go in and do that. The hero is usually of humble origin. There's Katniss. So it's usually an ordinary person. Of course, we have our superheroes, but they're to reflect mythologically and symbolically what the superheroes reflect is that we have superhero powers within too. And again, exaggeration to show the point. So this is ordinary, this is us, the average everyday person. The first step is the call to adventure. So here's where I'm gonna encourage you to write on your notepad, your own personal notepad. make connections between these stages. And it's not so important that you memorize all these different stages, but that you get a feel for it, feel for the overall flow of how it works. The first thing is the call to adventure. And this could be an internal push where we want to make an accomplishment, or we can be thrust into it. Like, for example, going to college, moving out from your parents' house, facing a challenge like dealing with debt, deciding you're going to tackle your debt, deciding to get in shape. Sometimes you're forced into it or pushed into it. Like if you get let's say, a parent becomes ill and you're put in a position of caretaking, right? So sometimes the world puts you into a heroic journey position, or people get drafted into the military, constricted into service for some reason. Even having to go to jail. There's a call to adventure, and we often refuse the call or resist the call. We don't want to do it. There's a part of us that, like, when we do it because we choose to, let's say we end up going to a AA, or we're going to quit something. Sometimes there's a give and take, a push and pull. Part of us wants to do it, part of us doesn't want to do it. And so sometimes we resist that call. We say we don't want to. So we don't always want to, but we can frequently, this represents that we can often feel internal resistance as part of the experience. And then there's the quest, then you're on the adventure. And the journey is seen as a quest, like an Indiana Jones adventure or a Katniss, adventure. So getting out of debt is adventure. Getting into shape is adventure. It's a quest. It's a journey. It's something that you want to do. It's a pilgrimage, right? Sailing around the world. You're going to be going from the known of where you've been to the unknown of figuring out how to get out of debt, how to get in shape, right? So what are you going to need on that journey is the next steps. There's crossing the threshold. You see here, the threshold crossing, when you're really committed. That's when you've really decided that you're going to do it. You're in all the way. Okay, so that's the crossing the threshold moment, and you're in the new territory. You're trying out the new diet. You're managing the budget, right? You're doing whatever it is that you need to do to step fully into there. So what are you going to need in order to move through this? Well, friends and allies is one of the first things that you need, right? So we need supporters, people who help us through this journey, right? People who give us a sense of encouragement and support. And you'll find that in any group, there's always this little group of friends, and they're always imperfect. It's right. It's an imperfect group of friends. So nobody's polished and perfect. Everybody's got foibles and flaws and, unique characteristics, but they work together, right, toward a common goal together. So developing friends and allies is one of the challenges that we face, especially if we're in a new world. We need to reach out and cultivate new friends and allies. And we can do that through things like support groups, clubs of people with like interests, and reaching out. Many people make friends by meeting friends of friends. So saying yes to those interactions where you can, hesitant to say that now because of the pandemic and we're still in transition, but when in the most safe and healthy ways possible, finding ways to engage, including things like Zoom. The other thing we need is a mentor. And the mentor these days, a wise guide that helps us through, that can give us some coaching and encouragement and some wisdom along the way. And these days, the mentor can expand and be YouTube channels. It can be, it can be books and insights and blogs, and it can come in all kinds of ways, right? And it can come in terms of people too, people that we know and people that we don't know, that we admire, that we imagine how they would face a particular situation. And that can teach us, or can expand the repertoire that we have inside of ourselves of how we are considering facing a particular situation. So we have friends, we need friends and support, a support group, support allies. mentor, a mentor, multiple mentors, sources of knowledge and encouragement. We could think of this as. And then there's always a villain or an inner challenge, like Batman and his bats, that the hero has to face in order to overcome the challenge. So, if we were to take our examples of, say, wanting to move from getting out of debt, the villain would be spending habits, right? That we have to face off. Those are the bats that we have to stand up to. Or if it's getting in shape, it's all the obstacles of the things of the sort of the counter desire to just be a couch potato and not do anything, right? So we can identify and see what our villain or our challenge is, what the thing in the obstacle that's in the way that we need to be willing to face up to, stand up and move through, to move to another level of being. And that's the whole thing, is that by going through this, we move to a whole nother level of being. So if you think about a challenge that you have faced and overcome in the past, that you have become a new person by facing and evolving through that challenge, write down on your own piece of paper what that challenge was. This is something in the past that you moved a heroic journey through. So what is something in the past that you have faced and overcome, and it developed new characteristics in you by facing and overcoming that challenge? This is in your past. It could be in childhood, young, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't have to be a big one. It can be, I used to eat, fast food all the time, and I shifted to healthy eating patterns. It can be anything that, I was really scared to live on my own, but I went and got an apartment, and now I'm able to support myself on my own. Whatever it is, something from the past that you already faced. And then write down, what is something that you had to let go of or overcome in order to do that? What is something you had to be willing to let go of, that you had to face and be willing to let change? See, it's a surrendering to change, allowing change. Allowing change means that an old way has to metaphorically die. You can think of the caterpillar becoming a butterfly. For that transition to happen, the caterpillar has to let go of being a caterpillar. So we have to let go of old versions of ourselves. We have to consistently be willing to shed old skins that we live in. So what is something that you let go of in order to achieve that goal or to make that transformation? Now, myths and stories often use like symbols to reflect things. So the outcome of the challenge, when you gain new things, it's often when you gain a new ability or character development. In myths and stories and movies, you often you can see, that the character has evolved, but the reward often comes with something special, right? The reward, they're showing you that this is a reward by showing you that the character often gets a reward, and it's often getting the romantic interest or a treasure of some kind, right? But before we get there, I mentioned earlier that the challenge in these shows that we watch is often depicted as almost impossible to surmount. And unless the show is a tragedy, it's a heroic journey. You'll find this motif pretty much fits pretty much everything, unless it's a tragedy where they aren't able to overcome. But oftentimes certain things like the 300, that movie, there's still heroic journeys, because what that reflects is the honor of giving it your all anyway. Giving it your all anyway. That's the great archetypal message of that show. Certainly an important one for us right now. Giving it your all, period. So the challenge is often depicted as insurmountable. And so we could think about the challenges we face today as a collective, like the environment, and protecting and sustaining a sustainable environment that can feel insurmountable, but it's not. That's what's critical about these stories. They're saying it's not. It may seem like it, but it's not. Don't buy into that. And you'll see that in story after story after story as you watch it. The challenge is not insurmountable. The challenge is approachable. We don't have control over the ending, but this challenge is approachable. All right, so the hero usually has to let go of something in order to overcome. This letting go is reflected. Remember how I said that that in these myths and stories, it's exaggerated, so we get the point unconsciously, and it shows it, like, for example, a low point, the abyss, the dark time, when there doesn't seem to be any hope, right? That's the abyss. And that's right before the moment of rebirth. And you've heard that great phrase that it's always darkest before the dawn. And that is what that is reflecting, that they're usually, and this is the final letting go of whatever we're resisting. So when you think about the challenge that you faced, what is something that you needed to let go of? What did you have to let go of? What had to be really dropped? What did you resist letting go of that you eventually had to let go of in order to make the transition? When I transitioned from eating healthy, and notice that there are these letting goes that are part of it. We've got, in order to transform, we have to let go and release our resistance to letting go of certain things. I had to let go of drinking Coca-Colas. That was one of my hardest ones because I love Coca-Colas. Oh my gosh, I love them so much. But now that I haven't drunk them for a while, I don't love them quite as much, which is really interesting. So I had to let go of a bunch of things. One of them was my resistance to letting go of Coca-Colas. So we can, when we face our current things, and I'll walk you through that in a few minutes, we'll go back through the slides and think about a current thing, and you can write these reflections for yourself. When we think about a current thing, we can ask, what am I resisting letting go of right now as I face the current challenge? What am I not letting go of? And then we have the final showdown, which is depicted as a major battle externally, which is a reflection of the battles we have internally, right? The push and pull between being willing or not being willing to let go of so that we can get to the next level. Often the hero has to face the challenge more than once. Okay, so this is normal. I want to normalize this, that I tried quitting Coca-Colas and eating healthy and not going through fast food restaurants when I was hungry and didn't have time, multiple times before I succeeded. It took several efforts. Most people who quit smoking try quitting multiple times before they quit. So it is for good. So it's the keep at it. And that's depicted in the movies, that they have to face it usually multiple times in the movie. You know, usually they face the scary thing, the challenge, the villain once, and then they have to face it again. It's at least twice, right? And they think maybe they overcome it, and then wham, they get hit again, right? So this is reassuring us. This is our ancestors have been through this, and they wrote this down in these myths and stories, and they're here to encourage us along on this heroic journey path that we're on, that is life. And then when the hero achieves his goal, did I miss one here? Nope. When the hero achieves his goal, there's the journey home. And when they get home, they have a greater understanding of themselves, and then they gain the ability to go back and help their tribe, their people, to help their people with their newfound gifts. So once we gain this, I think about things like people who go through a trauma, who are able to, like when we go through a really difficult emotional thing, a loss, for example, or some kind of trauma, and we're able to recover for it. We're able to get to that. That's what the book is about supporting our own resilience, because these things are really hard. So we need the support. It's really hard. It's not like you just go out and run a marathon. You need support. So as we move through it and we get to the other side of it, we now understand what it takes to get over that thing. It's like nobody understands what it takes to quit drugs like someone who has had to quit drugs, right? Once they've been through it, they get it. And so you've got this gift now that you can give from what you went through. So take a note, write down what it is that, what are some of the gifts that you're able to bring to others because of that challenge that you overcame? That's the whole point. We're all helping all of us rise up to new levels, right? So then the hero usually goes back home or to their people or whatever their tribe is, and they bring their gifts, they share their gifts, and they usually get some kind of prize too. Like I said, for some reason that slide's not here, but they get a prize like the love interest or a treasure or a magic sword or an honoring, which is, their way, the story's way of saying that it's time to savor that you achieved this wonderful thing, that you brought yourself to the next level. So now let's try applying the heroic journey steps to a call to adventure that you're dealing with right now. And this will be privately. So on your own notes, what is a current call to adventure that you're reflecting on? What is something a challenge that you're facing now that is a heroic journey story for you? This can be, again, something that comes from within, something that you want to make happen, like I want to get a goal, or it can come from without. The world challenges you and you have to respond to the call, like a loved one becoming ill and that you need to spend more time in caretaking, which is letting go of your old self that could do whatever you want whenever you want it. Another kind of call to adventure is going to school, attending college, adding college to your schedule, which requires a lot of adaptations and change. That's another call to adventure, right? Taking on a new job, moving to a new place, transitioning from one relationship, to another relationship or to living on your own. There's all kinds of ways that we face. I mean, our lives filled with heroic journeys. So what is one call to adventure that you're either facing right now or that you want to challenge yourself with, So you can jot that down. So we're going to apply this to ourselves. So here's the first step, call to adventure. So with this first step, we can recognize, we can help ourselves understand that we're going from the known to the unknown. So we got to cut ourselves some slack. We're on a learning curve here. We have to give ourselves some patience and some room to grow and some opportunity to grow. This isn't something we have nailed, that we've figured it out. We got it all down into a rhythm of the known. We're moving into unknown territory. So cut ourselves a break because we got to go on a learning curve now, right? We're not going to be at peak performance when we're in a learning curve. We're going to be in learning. So refusal of the call is, what are some of the resistances that you face relative to this? What are some of the parts of you that doesn't want to do it? What do you notice is like, I don't want to, or, I'd like to stay in my cozy home. I'd like to not have to deal with this. So just noticing this helps us realize that resistance is natural. And that helps us be able to work with it. We don't have to fight our resistance. We can honor it and work with it, right? We can loosen its grip with by being aware of it, by being respectful that it's natural to have resistance. That's why it shows up as a major variable in the heroic journey story, because it's real. It's not just something like, I shouldn't be resistant, I should just accept. It's not like that. It's more, okay, it's natural to have like, I don't want to, of course we don't want to, it's scary to go out from the known to the unknown. Even if the known is not a great habit, it's still known and there's a certain comfort in the known. So we approach ourselves with patience and encouragement when we notice our resistances. And we honor that we're going to develop the courage to face our resistances instead of being mad at ourselves for being resistant at all. It's just natural to be resistant. That's just part of the deal. That's why it's in the heroic journey kind of outline, why it's here. All right, so then the quest. So what is the quest? And the quest means I want to go from here to here, right? So what is the journey? So if it's college, you're on it, then I want to go from entering college to achieving a degree. So what is the quest? What is your What is your hope for the quest? What is your purpose for the quest? So just describe the quest. Now, what is it? What journey are you on? I'm on the journey to get a degree from college. I'm on a journey to get healthy with how I eat. I'm on a journey, and we talked about a week or two ago, I don't remember, about how we wanted to begin to identify with that journey. You know, I am the kind of person who is on a journey to get healthy, right? So we're going to have all kinds of obstacles and foes to vanquish, ways that we're tested, and challenges that seems impossible. Discouragement and despair are internal challenges that we face and often wrestle with. So next, write down some of the ways that you're tempted to go off the path, right? Some of the obstacles that you think that you'll encounter. Like, this is handy to be aware of. So for example, one of the things that I became aware of was that I needed to have some food around that was appealing in the refrigerator that I could eat quickly in order to not succumb to the temptation to go by a fast food place when I was hungry and impatient and tired from a busy day. So that was an obstacle. So then I realized, oh, I don't know what to make that would be appealing, right? I have to figure, so that's another obstacle. I have to figure out what to make that will be appealing to put into the refrigerator so it's there. Another obstacle is I got to figure out how to find the time to make something appealing, right? So this is how these obstacles show up in these little microwaves, right? Over something simple like changing, well, it's not that simple in our culture actually, but it is doable. So we'll have challenges and temptations when we're really in the new, and this is what I was describing relative to even just changing your diet, how these little, like any kind of situation that you want to change is going to throw up these challenges. And that's why we have to be flexible, to be able to adapt ourselves and learn as we go along, right? So after we find some recipes, then it's like, okay, when am I going to find? So then we have to figure out where to find the time to make that food is. And that'll be a learning curve as we evenings, I'm too tired. You discover that you're too tired at night, so you try to find another time. And if you just keep whittling at it, you'll find a rhythm, but it won't be, usually there'll be obstacles along the way. Now, friends and allies here can be YouTube recipe guidelines, on how to make 10 meals on a Sunday, right? They can be all kinds of different things, friends and allies, things that help us, that support us along the way. And sharing our goals with others is a way that we can expand friends and allies. Having a mentor, new information is what this reflects. So what do I need to learn in order to achieve this is a great question to ask as you go along. Who are some people that I could reach out for support, for guidance, for information, and what are some information, what are the kinds of knowledge that would help me achieve my goal? What's the new, these are symbolic sources of wisdom and information that can come in many forms. So we're going to need new information as we go on the new journey, right? New insights. If it's going to college, it can be talking to your classmates, talking to the people around you, developing connections. And mentors are some of the people that you can turn to at the college, for example, right? From counselors to academic advisors to your instructors, to club people, to people over at the Center for Academic Success. We have all kinds of wonderful mentors, and it's a good thing. That's what the stories are telling us. You want to establish relationships with mentors. And it sort of cracks me up that the mentors are often retired. They're often pulled out of retirement. I think that's funny. Like Gandalf, so what this is saying is that you're going for old wisdom, historic wisdom, ancestral wisdom from people who've been through this path before. All right. So the inner challenge or villain, what is the villain? What's the symbolic villain in your current situation that you've got to face off, right? in order to achieve the goal. And it's really interesting to start to see this because it starts to bubble up, like it was very helpful when I realized that the biggest obstacle I had to eating healthy was that I would put off making food until I was starving. And once I realized that, I could go, oh, okay, I need to figure out how to make food in advance so it's already there, because I tend to not realize I'm hungry until I'm like really hungry. And I don't have the patience or even the blood chemistry to cook. So it's really interesting how these kinds of challenges that we face can emerge. I mentioned one of the things, this is to help us through discouragement. This is to help us realize, keep going even when you're discouraged, because it's part of the journey to go through discouragement. And the final showdown is when the hero really just faces off that discouragement fully and moves to the other side, just like, enough is enough, I'm going for it. Often we have to face it more than once. So I think this is so important to really absorb. My journey to eating healthy had lots of switchbacks and setbacks, where I would go off and then get back on. And, I discover that it was working here, but not there, right? Like I could work it out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but Thursdays, it fell apart for whatever reason, right? And so I continually had to look at what the obstacle was and how I could address that obstacle. And this is how, people like SpaceX and, all kinds of engineers and things, this is how they tackle big problems. They expect there to be a steady stream of obstacles. See, we have unfortunately kind of in the background an unspoken a priori assumption that we shouldn't have obstacles. And that's why we talked about the Tao in the beginning, because its basic life is basically a steady onslaught of obstacles. Winston Churchill said that life is one damn thing after another. So basically, it is a steady stream. So what we want to do is let go of expecting things to always be smooth and allow that to be okay. Allow it to be. Let's take a breath and release. Let's just let go and imagine allowing it to be okay that we face, that obstacles are a regular part of the deal. And we can get joy from overcoming those obstacles, from getting to a new level. Look at the extraordinary way it feels to have gained, to have finished your accomplishment, to have achieved, to have moved to the other side, and how you evolved. Like, what gift do you hope to get? And this is the last question for your reflection. What gift do you hope to achieve? And this is in terms of your personal development as you complete the challenge, or as you come to the other side of the journey of the challenge that you're facing. What are you hoping is on the other side of that journey? What do you want to draw from yourself? How do you want it to develop your own character to have faced this journey, right? To have faced the obstacle. And that's the elixir. That's the treasure. That's what the treasure symbolizes. It's the treasure that then gives your being with the ability to help others who are going through that scary time, who are facing that obstacle, because there's nobody more qualified than somebody who's been through it and gotten to the other side of it themselves. Okay, great. That's it. That's our lecture for today. It's very simple. I want to show you this is Rick Hansen, rickhansen.net, which I'll be encouraging everybody to go to and check out in the assignment and explore one aspect of it. Well, actually, I'll do that in the discussion. And So I'm just going to show you real quick here on the read and reflect that we have our 3 gratitudes that we went through today, but it's great to do them again. Atomic habit check-in. And a lot of times this is the time when people like to start to think about another atomic habit or shifting or just sustaining and keeping them and expanding where they are. And then you've got options to pick about how to explore this heroic journey motif that we talked about. One of them is consider how an experience of your life now and in the past connects with the stages. So this is going through it again, which will really help reinforce this so that you can sort of see it as a patterning in the stories that you watch and in your own life. It's really helpful and encouraging because it's like you have all your ancestors of humanity behind you, encouraging you along with all the stories that you read and watch because they've been through it, right? And it's so amazing how it was reflected imaginally like that. Option 2 is we become the stories we tell ourselves. What story would you like to become? Is there a story you have lived that you want to transform into a new one? I should probably put a link with this, come to think of it, to help people reflect on that a little bit more. But basically, we can tell ourselves, you know, that I'm no good at money, or I just can't do school, right? And so these stories that we tell ourselves are stories that we live out. So I'm no good at relationships, whatever it is. So this is inviting you to reflect on a short story that you would like to transform and rewrite. And I'll put a link on there. There's actually a TED Talk on that's really good on change the story to change your life. So change your story to a heroic journey story, from a victim story to a heroic journey story is what this is about. So I'll expand on that a little bit in the assignment. And option 3, what are 3 ways that you would like to expand your inner hero? This was one of my favorite lessons I learned, is that I can't remember who told me this. It was years ago, but someone said to me, Linda, 5 years are going to, oh, I know. I was thinking about not going back and getting my degree. I dropped out in my 20s from college. And then I was thinking about going back, and I was working in a restaurant and I was serving a regular, and he was a lawyer. And he said to me, you know, Linda, 5 years are going to pass and you're going to have a degree or you're not. Which do you choose? I was like, whoa, I thought about that for a while. And then I thought, okay, I'll go back. So it's interesting to think about our lives in 5-year increments. It takes about 5 years to become really good at something. So if we put a lot of energy into something for 5 years, we'll get quite good at it. So if you want to play guitar, you put a lot of energy into it for 5 years, you'll become quite competent at playing guitar. You do it for 10, you'll become really, really good. So it's investing the energy. So what do we want to invest our life force energy into, right? So that's what this question invites us to consider. So you can think of it in any of these kinds of ways. 3 changes you would like to make in your life over the next 5 years, what they are and how they would impact your life experience, right? Something you would like to master over the next 5 years or become really good at, and a vision for yourself and the life you want to create. Okay, so